Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We got a brand new series here. I'm joined with Stamina and Travis. But before we get too much into talking with these guys, I do want to kind of introduce the series a little bit. This was an idea that Stamina and I had quite some time. Been trying to put it together, and I think the major was a perfect time to launch this. But it's just about talking over the new stuff the new events that have come out, and trying to recap stuff that's been taking place in the tier 1 space, because needs to be another CS podcast in the mix there, and there's not many brighter minds than Stamina in North American Counter-Strike, and of course myself. So there we go. We got a good bunch, and as well, we got a great find in Travis. This guy has the best tweets.
Yeah.
I do want to introduce him. He has my favorite tweets on Twitter right now. I always hype him up
Okay.
whenever I talk about his tweets, because
That's adorable, man.
no,
Thank
they're
you. I
always so
appreciate
interesting. So
it.
yeah, and then of course you guys know Stamina. He plays for Strife, and he's IGLing over there. He's trying to build up a new team that's gonna be dominating North America. So I feel like we got ourselves a good bunch of guests. How y'all doing today?
Doing great.
Yeah, I'm chilling. I actually was on a little podcast thingy earlier today, and that was technically my first ever one. So now we've got my second of the day. It's like London buses, two came at once.
That's
Insane.
crazy. Yeah, I know. I guess they just keep on flooding in. Again, but there's never enough CS podcasts. I feel like I just run through all
Of
of them.
course. I like talking. We all do.
Perfect.
So,
We all do.
For
yeah.
sure. So, you guys can see at the bottom of your screen there, this is kind of what we're going to be covering for this event. I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about the pick'ems right now, because Challenger stage just completed and you just finished it up. I just want to know, first off, what exactly are those pick'ems looking like? Did we pass the test?
We passed.
I passed, but it was, let's say it was, a bit squeaky. Let's
Yeah,
say
mine
that.
wasn't pretty either.
Yeah?
So.
Yeah, so I had Vitality 3-0. I locked that one in. I also had 0-3 IHC, and I want to just say I'm not regretting that at all. I think way too many people are saying this team is like the big up and coming. Don't get me wrong, they look good versus Renegades, right? But then they lose to Complexity, who they were looking pretty abysmal in this event, and versus like the European scene, and I think they got blasted out by Astralis. So truly, like I do kind of think Renegades was an easier choice because that was how they were able to qualify. But I mean, I will say I don't regret the pick too much either.
Yeah. For me, I went Renegades 03. I thought that was like way easier to lock in because I thought them and IHC were like the bottom two, and IHC 2-0'd Renegades when they played. So I was like, if they match up somehow at 0-2, then I got my boys at IHC. So yeah, I went with Renegades. I got that. I put NSET 3-0. I don't regret it. I think they could have easily gone 3-0, but they didn't go 3-0. So then my pick'ems look a little silly. But then I kind of got bit because I had MIBR and fours going through, and both of them didn't at the last step. And to be honest, the fours not going through was a huge surprise to me. I didn't put Imperial to go through. I kind of regret it, but like I still think that like fours is the better team. I mean, they went 2-0. I think there was a statistic on Twitter I saw that if you go 2-0, you have like an 87% chance of going through, something like that.
Yeah.
So that's pretty tough to lose out on that. And then MIBR, they were right there. I thought they could have made it through. They looked pretty good, but that's whatever. I made it through with G2, Vitality, Outsiders, Liquid, and Renegades. So it was
Okay.
pretty tough. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I bottled it. Simple as that. I knew for a fact I should have put Renegade 03, but I
Yeah.
like literally IHC beat them and we saw it. We all saw it happen. But like,
know.
yeah, it's just as I said earlier, like there's a subconscious thing in the back of your mind when you do this, where it's like Renegades. Oh, I know those guys. Like, but obviously, they would categorically quite worse. It's just you recognize the organization, you recognize some of the names, you look at IHC like, I don't know who those guys are, even though they're sick. Like Blitz and Score have like put themselves on the map for like the next 6 months probably. They're going to be, it's going to be interesting to see how they progress after this, even though they didn't get through. But yeah, I got through with. I put BNE 3-0 incidentally, but I got through with ENTS to qualify, Vitality to qualify, G2 to qualify, Outsiders, And then I was fortunate enough to get Astralis and Liquid playing each other on the final day, and that secured the 5. So it was a bit scary. I also picked fours to go through. When they're at 2-0, I was feeling quite confident. But as you say, I think even though I'm a huge Jerry fan, I love what Jerry does. I think he speaks so eloquently about the teams that he's been on in that organization. And the form of Shalfie and Zorta and Kenzie especially was so impressive to me, but the lack of experience, really showed against Imperial, like really badly showed. Like you wouldn't think for a million years that it would be like FNX and Fallen and not Cold Zero, for example, qualifying for the next stage again, but experience really told, and you could just see it. Like Forza felt nervous. You could see it with your own eyes.
Yeah, no, I mean I fell in the same boat with you. I thought fours were a lock in because of the start that they had, but then I was like looking back at the competition again. It's Renegades, Bad News Eagles. They still kind of impressed, but they got hit with, I feel like, just a huge wave of pressure when they got to the finish line there. Where like they probably should have closed it out, right? They were very very close, and then they definitely ended up choking that pretty hard, and that's kind of where you get into the experience. I think you're exactly right there. But I had Vitality 3-0. That was a huge lock in right there because I just figured that Xiaowu, when he steps up to a major, I know he's had a pretty rough year this year, but like you want to kind of get a little bit of a riskier pick for your 3-0, not one that's secured.
Yeah.
I did think Vitality should have made it, but again, like they weren't able to make it past like Skate in the Pinnacle Cup recently, so like they obviously have had their serious issues, and I could definitely see them bottoming out there. But if Xiaowu has one good day in the best of one stage, then there's no doubt that they're going to be able to close that one out pretty clean.
Yeah, I actually I had wanted to go G2 3-0, and last year, or last major rather, I was gonna go G2 3-0, and I'm like, they're not like, because I was gonna put G2 3-0 with the last major as the team who like they might go really lucky and go 3-0 or just not make it at all. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I thought a lot of
That's
people
the
thought
strat.
like they weren't gonna go
That's the
through.
strat, yeah.
But then this year, I was like, okay, they might actually be the best team in the stage. I should put them 3-0. I don't trust it. Maybe Monezi won't be like super confident right away. I was wrong. I should have put him 3-0. So I was kicking myself for that one, but yeah.
Yeah. So we all passed. I mean, that's the important thing is that we all made it past the stage. I think
Yes.
I was in the same boat as you, where I had Liquid and Astralis, like in the last stage, finishing things out. So I was like, this isn't pretty, but I'll take it. Like this is just what we need. As long as we finish the job, then we're golden. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can kind of move on to highs and lows, and while you all are talking, I'll probably switch that little ticker there at the bottom. But yeah. So talk me through like the biggest disappointments and the highest, the best form in which we've seen these teams, right? I think Vitality did kind of show a little bit of resurgence, taking on some of the lesser teams. G2, they cleaned their way through. So walk me through some of your all thoughts. Travis, you go first.
Well, I think for me, after seeing how poor Spirit were online, only like a couple of months ago, and then like one online tournament, they sort of then suddenly looked like a completely different team again. Like Dexter, Magix, and they just looked like they could gel again out of absolutely nowhere. They looked so rough around the edges when they added those two new players, Patsy and Siren, right? And sort of suddenly out of nowhere, one Pinnacle Cup and now the major, they're back to sort of, previous form where they can be a scary team to face. Like they pushed G2 incredibly close. That was 1917 on Dust 2. Yeah, I was quite impressed with them, and I didn't pick them either. I mean, I feel a bit bad for that because I should have trusted in it really. They were a good solid surprise for me, a good positive surprise. And the one I would say I think is going to be the obvious one to say that to be most disappointed in is Astralis. I mean, Spirit absolutely owned them, and fact of the matter is, ZipX for me is past it, and they need to move on. But that's for a whole other day, probably. So go ahead, Stamina.
Yeah, so I'd have to say for my low, I'll start with my low as well. It's got to be Astralis to pick up on that. I mean, losing to Liquid, like obviously as an NA hopium here, but like I think that was like actually a pretty good matchup because you have Liquid who is really, some people were saying like, if they don't do very well, Shox is out or whatever, but now they came on the panel and they were like, no, we're chilling. We like our roster. and no matter what happened here, we were probably going to be okay with our roster. So hearing that now, it makes me realize like Liquid has nothing to lose at this event, or at least that's how they're portraying it to be. And so I thought that was like a pretty good matchup because you have Astralis who has all of the pressure on them. Like if they don't
Yeah.
qualify, I mean that's bad, right? But Liquid had none. And then Elise came out and said like, yeah, we didn't really prep that hard for them because we didn't have too much time. And it's like, oh, that sounds just brain dead, but like they didn't even prep and they just destroy these guys, right? So I thought that was pretty crazy. I'm happy for Liquid, but pretty underwhelming by Astralis. I think for me, when I watch them play, I actually made a video on this on like their nuke and their style and how they approach it and how it works. They can't make that work on every map. That's the biggest problem. Is like BlameF, Glaive,
Right.
and Config all kind of play the same role on CT side and even a little bit on T side. Like I know Glaive goes aggressive, like a little bit more aggressive, but they're still like that playmaker. They still like to all be the playmaker. And when you have all three of them, you kind of need like a guy like a Zipnix who plays that style but is also performing. It's
Yeah.
tough because then everybody's gonna look at Zip and be like, well, he's the reason why, and it's hard to like look past his performances. But at the end of the day, sometimes when those three are taking everything on the map, it's hard to get involved. Same with Farley. I mean, Farley, you know, if you watch some of the maps, he's just like starting dead EA on Ancient with an op, and he's not going for aggressive peaks. He's not, getting up short. He's not peeking into mid. So when you have those three just taking so much of the map and taking so many fights, it's like hard for other people to get involved. But yeah, something has to change, but it's pretty unfortunate for them. I'd say my biggest high would have to be Imperial. Like they came in and everybody was like, why are they doing this? You saw the video, like, or at the end of the interview with Fallen, he's like, everybody was like, how are we doing this? Why are we doing this? HLTV made the article. I was pissed off about that. But I think like when you look at Imperial and you look at all the fans behind them and the pressure that they had on them, like I think their fans probably all put Imperial through. I didn't put Imperial through. Most
I
people didn't
didn't.
put Imperial
No.
through, right? But like Brazilians, which is like the biggest community in Counter-Strike, maybe all had them going through. So when you have that much pressure to perform and you've got like 3 30-year-olds who are just like out of the meta and they make it through, like that's pretty crazy. So I was happy to
Yeah.
see them through. It screwed up my pick'ems a little bit, but like I was happy.
Mhm.
Um, but I think yeah, that was pretty much the biggest high for me, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that. I mean, I also on the Astralis point, I think that's a really good point about Glaive because like, obviously he's had so much success, especially on Nuke. Like it's like that was their god tier map for God knows how long, and it's probably quite hard for him to not be stubborn to change things, like he's going to have to change. Him evolving as an IGL has had to happen, and I feel like perhaps now obviously we're at that stage where he's not stuck in the past necessarily, but sort of he's completely plateaued and that style doesn't really work anymore. And like sure he can take inspiration from someone like Fallen who's literally got these players who have come back from the dead like FNX and Third to the next edge of the major, but like yeah, I mean, I think that you're spot on with that, and Imperial indeed are a beautiful. Honestly, like a lot of people, aren't too much of a fan of the Brazilian scene and the Brazilian players, but I think that's a beautiful story, honestly, especially for someone like FNX, who, as Fawn said in that interview, didn't really have much going for him really, other than CS. So, good for him, really.
Yeah. I kind of put my high point as like the entirety of Brazil. I guess you kind of like mark out 9Z, I guess South America, to be more specific. But I think MIBR came really close to qualifying out at this stage, almost like beating Bad News Eagles. They took Astralis really close. Like they had multiple opportunities to actually make it through 16-14 over Outsiders. And this is a team that like a couple of seasons ago was playing in NA Advanced, right? They didn't get much
Yeah.
time in Europe, and since they have been getting time in Europe with like their multiple different coaches, I think during that blast little like blast qualifier for North America, they had like interviews with the team, and they have like an offense coach. They have like an actual coach, like a strategic coach. Like they have all of these different support staffs, and I think it's really paying off. Coupled with the fact that they have a lot of time in Europe that they've been able to boot camp, but they really impressed me, and I
Yeah.
think if you shake off a couple of those small issues, and you're able to close out those 16-14 series, that's an easy coasting through for MIBR in like a 3-1 fashion almost. And so I think you got to be pretty happy if you're Brazilian, knowing that you almost had multiple teams make it through into the legend stage to
Yeah.
join Furia.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I
you have to.
mean,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead. No, you go first. All good.
All right, so to touch on that too is like MIBR almost going through, and as you mentioned, just practicing in NA is like a big fuck you to all the teams who are like NA has bad practice. We can't improve in NA because these guys just come over. Their practice was probably better in Brazil,
Yeah.
honestly, with the current level over there. They come over and because when you come to NA, you think like, oh, I'm coming to NA. It's like maybe slightly a better region, but it's not because EG and Liquid aren't here.
Mhm.
Complexity is not even here. So all of a sudden, MIBR is playing us for 8 hours a day. I'm not even kidding. When we were boot camping in Philadelphia, I think we played 8 scrims in 2 days against MIBR. Like these guys are grinding. They're just head down, like trying to get better. And like it kind of says a lot to the other teams who are all, bitching about practice and whatnot. These guys, they're not talking about practice. They're just going in and they're getting their job done. So it's pretty impressive. But I think they should have went through. I actually had them going through, and I thought the reason that I thought they would is because their most experienced player is their in-game leader, Cello. He's been to the major before. He's the only player on that team who has been to the major, and he's also like their hype man. You have Bit coming in as the coach, and all of Brazil only cares about Imperial and Furia doing well. There's no pressure on MIBR.
Mhm.
There's no pressure. Like I was pretty sad that they didn't
Yeah.
make it through, but it is what it is. But they still had a nice run, pretty respectable. And who knows, maybe Brazil will have more slots at the next major, and that'll be a good thing for them. So
Yeah. I mean, we'll have more slots. It'll just be in the Americas. So
yeah,
you,
yeah,
you guys kind of
Yeah.
benefit potentially.
yeah.
I do want to slam dunk real quick on the Astralis note because I'm with you all. If you have the second highest rated player and you were unable to qualify, that's just like absolutely horrendous. And obviously there's like
Yeah.
a certain like level of play style for Blame F, right? But like the guy was going absolutely crazy, and this they couldn't qualify, and then of course like Zipix is just actually getting abused on anchors, like targeted almost. It's kind of crazy. I watched the Haka video, and it's just like it's blaringly obvious, and it has to be. And I know that he's got like a long-term deal, but that's just can't
I,
happen at this
I was
point.
confused about that long-term deal when it happened, to be honest. I mean, the main thing behind that obviously is to keep the slot right for the major, so they didn't have to go through the open quals, if I'm not mistaken. But like, yeah, it's it just doesn't look right. I mean, there are a couple of teams, right, that who didn't qualify. You can say the major was a huge success. You could say MIBR, sure, they didn't qualify, but they showed what they can do.
Hmm.
You could say 9Z, sure, I mean, stickers. They got stickers. That's a
Yeah.
huge thing for them, but I'd say that's a success for them. And then you got teams like Astralis, huge failure. I mean, I'm sure we'll get onto complexity at some point as well about how rough around the edges they looked.
Hmm.
And actually, I'd even say a team like Eternal Fire, honestly, I would say the major would be a success for them. Sure, they didn't look too great, but they got the stickers for their organization, and that is a huge deal when you have such huge backing, in Turkey for a team like that with stars such as Antares and Woxic. So, yeah, I would say, yeah, Astralis, big failure. Some of the teams that didn't make it can still most certainly consider it a success, though, especially MIBR for me.
For sure. Yeah. Complexity was another kind of one. I don't want to like harp too much on the low points, right? But they were another slightly disappointing feat for them, because I feel
Junior
like they
Honey. I'm
yeah
sorry, Honey.
yeah
Oh.
they'd been improving, I feel like, on the international stage step by step, and I think everyone's kind of issue with that roster is consistent, right? Or that op isn't necessarily having the same impact as some of the star riflers. Like you get a floppy on a good game, he's going to do a whole lot for you, and clutches as well. Like winning really impossible clutches with a rifle, but you're not winning the games because you don't have your op, the most important gun in the game, having a high level. And so I think that's definitely going to be a problem long term for complexity. If they can't really get a wrap on that, and if Junior can't get to the level he needs to be to kind of join with the rest of his team.
Yeah,
The most
such a
disappointing
huge
thing for
role.
me about complexity was like I scrimmed them 36 hours before their first match. that's a problem, right? Like if I'm in their situation, I'm calling up Jason the day we lose our Blast showdown match, and I say, "Send us to Europe now. We need to get some matches in. We need to get some scrims in. We need to like." Liquid didn't really boot camp either. They said they had like 4 days there. I think it
Yeah.
was more like 3. I don't even know. Like I don't know if they're exaggerating that, but I tried to do the math and like figure out how they could have had 4 days based on what I know, and it didn't seem like
Well,
they had 4 days. I'm not.
they had Dallas too, right? So I'm not sure
Yeah,
when Dallas concluded, but that
yeah,
was really rough. The Blast and Dallas
really
things
rough. Yeah.
were rough, but they also got knocked out in the first stage of
Yeah,
Blast.
yeah,
So
they got knocked out
both of
immediately,
them.
so did Complexity. So that's what I'm saying, like, I thought they would've both been able to get there and get at least, like, 4 full days if you add, like, 1 production day for PGL, but I also have to say, like, I mean, it really sucks that Blast scheduled how they scheduled and that ESL scheduled how why couldn't we just do these qualifiers, like, after the major? Like, there's actually a pretty big gap between Dallas and after the major, and like, I don't know. It just to me, it was like they either needed to move those like a couple weeks earlier so that everybody could have gotten to Europe for the boot camp or after. And even then, I mean, like if I'm Complexity, I still would have went like 3, 4 days earlier. I don't know why
Hmm.
they went last second. That was something that bothers me as a competitor because like I would have got my work to send me over early if I'm being honest. And I know Complexity has the resources. Like get them over there, get them some scrims. Like it's just so hard, especially when you look at Bad News Eagles and these guys that were like boot camping out of a fan's house. Come on. We gotta do more. We gotta do more.
For sure.
Yeah. Respect. I hugely respect the BNE story. I mean, like the fact that they've sort of come so far and they actually got to the next stage. You know, they, as they said themselves, like they can play without pressure, and that's the difference between those FPL grinders. Like literally, those nearly everyone on the team is known for grinding FPL. So
Hmm.
like I mean, they've sort of put so much work in, and like as you say, complexity is sort of not in that position to be able to do that due to those various aspects. And I feel like that can contributed to the form of some of the players. I mean, like Grim wasn't the player we know. Sure, I'm pretty sure Stamina, you'll be able to touch on this a little bit more. That his Grim's roles are quite different, if I'm not mistaken, and it's sort of maybe lowering his numbers a bit. But if you don't have your primary AWPer hitting the easy shots.
Hmm.
Like OC didn't hit every shot, right? Like OC was probably about 75% of his max level, from what I could tell in the matches that Liquid won and played well in. And Junior still hit like half the shots OC hit, like in general over those matches. So, as I said, like I mean, he's a lovely guy, I'm sure, and I don't want to harp on about it, but like you're gonna need him either to completely transform and have his performances against tier 1 opposition like he can play against tier 2 North America, or you're gonna need to try someone else, maybe even someone like Halzerk, cough, Dignitas releasing their team. Who knows?
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah. Grim was also pretty rough this event, but I don't want to make any sort of excuses, but his weeks in the week the time leading up to this event, the guy
He
was
was ill.
he was dropping crazy numbers in North America. Like Dallas, he had a really good event. Blast, he was still putting up his numbers. And then yeah, I think there was just, and it could have been a combination of being sick and not having that European
Yeah.
experience, right? Because Grim's gonna get away with a whole lot more with his mechanical ability here in North America than he is over in Europe, right? But I definitely think that the drop off that we saw in between those two was far too much to be just discomfort in Europe. So.
Something that I've noticed when with this complexity roster, just like last thing to touch on, is that when they actually brought in um Junior and then they made all those changes, the one thing that I realized was that when they brought in Grim, there was a lot of role overlap between Grim, Floppy, Fang, and JT, literally all 4. Because
Right.
what you had in Marky was he played all the bitch roles. He did every bitch role and he went in first on T side, right? So now you're
Bless him.
taking Fang, who's like a rotator and like an aggro player, and then you're taking Grim, who also wants to play rotator positions and aggro. And then, truth be told, every end game leader in the world wants to play rotator positions because it's so hard to be sitting ramp on CT nuke and command your troops outside and upper on what they should be doing in the mid round
Mhm.
when you're just disconnected, right? So it forced a JT into some weird roles. It forced Grim into some weird roles. And like when Grim was playing on Liquid, he just got those roles because you're going to join Liquid and you're going to do what you're told
Mhm.
and you're going to try your best. But like coming into complexity, I looked at it Grim as like their best player. I didn't think that like there should be argument between Fang and Grim over like who's playing where, you know what I mean? And that's what's tough about it. And the truth be told is like as an in-game leader, if I just go and I take like Fang and I'm like, yo, Fang, you're just gonna take Marquis roles over, and Fang's like, well, that's polar opposite to what I've been playing for 9 months. He's gonna play way worse. So you try to make it even, you try to make it fair. And I think that's the biggest problem is like a lot of people are looking at Junior. Yeah, Junior could play better, but like their riflers, you're not getting the most out of all their riflers right now. That's kind of the problem for me. So that's kind of
Yeah.
tough to look at too. But
Yeah, that was something that you kind of mentioned. Is that Marky very effective in those roles? I will say Fang is he's been pretty consistently solid, but again, the role overlap is definitely there. But we can move on. I feel like we covered that quite nicely. We can go to the biggest surprises of the event. I'll give this one to you, Stamina. Travis got last time. So, what was the biggest surprise of the challenger stage for you?
I mean, the biggest surprise is truthfully Astralis not going through. But other than that, I'd say like I couldn't believe that Spirit went through, but not Fours. I thought it was the opposite, right? Like I thought Spirit was a good team, and you have Dexter, Chopper, and Magix that can always do something, right? Or not Mirror, sorry, Dexter, Chopper, and what did I say? Magix. Anyways, their
You got it
core,
right.
right? Oh, I had it right. Okay, I thought I said Mirror for a second, but anyways, you have their core who they can make something happen, but you're gonna need Dexter to play at like simple levels, and he did,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like he did, he played really well. But with fours, I was looking at Shelfie, and I'm like, Shelfie's performing incredibly. Zorte is incredible. Kenzie's incredible. Jerry's the best fragging end game leader probably in the world right now, like arguably statistically. I mean, I thought Fours was going to make it through. I thought Nerves would get to Spirit because I didn't do my research on Patsy or Siren really. I didn't really know too much about them or their strengths, but I was watching the G2 game, and that's the game that made me realize like Spirit's a lot better. At one point, I think Patsy was like 4-15 or like 4-12 or something. And when they got to the CT side dust too, he started double opping. And this guy's like 3K,
Yeah.
4K, 2K, 4K, 3K, and then he just starts dominating. And he finishes the game like 27-25, which isn't like mind blowing, but when you're 4-15, it's like holy shit. So I think Patsy was a big surprise to me. He's a stud. And then the other guys showed up. So I mean, that was the biggest surprise. I thought it would be flipped. I thought Forest should have made it and Spirit shouldn't have, but that for me is probably the biggest surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Ah.
I just watched Spirit right before they left to the major in like a Pinnacle Cup, and they
Yeah.
were like they were horrendous. They were really difficult to watch. I can't remember the team that they were playing up against. But
I'll have a look for you.
yeah,
Finest.
Finest. Yeah, that's the one.
They
And
barely squeaked a win through against him. Yeah.
yeah, and Finest is playing with a new roster. They're always somewhat inconsistent. I never really know what to expect from them, but like they just couldn't really figure things out. Their T sides were just horrible, and they're able to close things out. They turned it around on land, but I think you're right. It was my biggest surprise as well. Seeing Dexter go to that level on land is absolutely absurd, and I wonder if he's going to do any sort of that sort of performance here into the legend stage, because he was still impressive up against the tougher teams. Like I kind of shocked that Astralis bottomed out, but he was still very good against them. And so I'm wondering if he can keep that up. What the potential is. I see a lot of people with him in the O3 picks, and I'm worried about that. I would not be too confident in that. But yeah, that was my biggest surprise as well, for sure.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned about Spirit being my 0-3 as well. I think I'm going to stick to it, but like
Mm.
my logic behind it is that if it's Spirit versus BNE in 0-2, I think BNE can play without as much pressure because they've got through to the stage they had their goal set to, as was said by Regon, I think it was in that interview. And if Spirit play Imperial, from what I've seen from Imperial, surprisingly, I feel like Imperial can still win that because those are sort of the three teams that people are putting sort of 0-3. I mean, obviously there were some people even putting Liquid 0-3, but I couldn't do that. My biggest surprise in general, aside from the obvious that we've already been over, I actually will say Imperial. because I think in general the majority. I did tweet this the other day. Like the majority of people, when this roster started, they were thinking. I mean, everyone saw the tweets, like from Ryan and everyone. Like everyone saying, "Oh, this is a joke. Like, what? Where's Bolt's going? Why is Vinny leaving Fury to put himself in a retirement home and stuff like that?" And then first month, 2 months, very rough looking. They lost to some scary looking losses online against some poor teams. And then suddenly, slowly, the old synergy, I guess, from 2016 came back again because there's so many people, as you said earlier, actually, like apart from Brazil picked them 100%. And then all of us in EU and quite a lot of people in NA, I would imagine as well, just didn't consider them to be a factor as a team that could actually make the next stage. They just thought, okay, well, listen, they've made the major now. They've got the stickers. That's huge for the brand. That's exactly what I think Fulham's goal would have been for this Last Dance project, to get stickers and get all the support, the ridiculous amount of support. Well, I think Goals had 350,000 viewers at one point, just absolutely nutty. But to actually qualify and roll back the years, quite literally, FNX has come back from the dead. Like, he's not high fragging, but he's in a role that makes neutral stats is all he needs to do, and he's doing his job really well. And he's even having some pretty star rounds as well. And then Fur's killing people again, like it's his his era where he was beating out Cold Zero in ratings. Fallen's hitting his shots again, and then Bolts and Vinny are just consistent as always, and it's actually working. And I think that's honestly incredibly impressive.
Yeah, I think that almost comes down to just having so much experience on land versus a lot of teams that might not have it, right? Like they hop into this major and that's their domain. They've been there so many times before. And I think the same thing can kind of be said about Chopper over on Spirit as well, right? So maybe that's a lot of why these players and these teams that we don't have a lot of high expectations for are doing really well. But I was incredibly impressed with Imperial. I was not expecting them. I was with you, Stamina, when you talk about the teams that are actually looking, like they're improving and you have some lifespan to them. It's MIBR, right? But Imperial were impressive as ever.
I will say even the experience angle really is what I think even got Imperial through the Americas RMR. I think in a world where Party Astronauts is playing from home, they probably beat them. That was a close series, and I mean, even just watching map 1, Party Astronauts 16-9, if you get a 16-9 win at home drinking a Coca-Cola, you're 2-0ing. You're 2-0ing. I'm just, it's one of those things where experience can't be bought. You can't buy it. You can't speed up the process. And another thing about Imperial too is it's really good that they signed with an organization that had no touch in Counter-Strike, because imagine the same roster signed with MIBR, right? They would have had to play Blast. They would have had to play Pro League, whatever tournaments they get invited to, right? Based on what they had signed with. And so instead, Imperial, although they looked horrible, and you got to watch some of their games playing in relog cups and whatnot, but Imperial didn't have to play the top dogs right away. They kind of just got to grind. They just got to see themselves, feel themselves out, play a lot of scrims, be in Europe, play some matches that didn't mean much. I mean, shit, they could have lost every match leading up to the RMR, but nothing else mattered. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
Their trajectory is really good for them, because they have a lot of pressure, but pressure doesn't get to you when you're 30 and you've done it 100 times over. So yeah.
I guess in that case, what do you think the lifespan is for this team? Right, how long do you think they can perform? What do you think the cap is then? In that case,
well, for me, I mean that just this performance alone in the major is going to net them so many future invites, right? I mean, they're already going to be playing the Pinnacle Cup Championship in Sweden. That's going to be in June, June the 8th. So, I mean, that event's going to have EG, whatever roster they bring to it, Big, MIBR, Fnatic, whatever roster they bring to it, Copenhagen Flames, Astralis, and Heroic. So that's another fascinating event, another LAN event. That's another fascinating chance to see what they can do against that level of opposition. And I feel like their peak could be maybe 20th, maybe 15th, something like that. Because I feel like online, they could easily fall off a cliff for me. So if they continue to play lots of online events and fall out last, that could be a problem. But if they continue to get invited to these LANs, then for me, they've got a good shot, I'd say.
That was actually gonna be my point exactly. Like they're coming in at a time too where lands are kicking back up, and
Yeah.
it's looking
Yeah.
like it's only gonna be lands like after the major. Like, and has there even been a case of COVID at the major? We haven't had one person who was like, "Oh no, they
Nothing
have to
so
play in
far.
the studio."
He's jinxed it.
Well,
He's
I'm
jinxed it
Oh
now.
no.
Yeah,
No,
but
cut that part out of
He's
the
getting
VOD.
COVID.
but my point is like if these guys are only playing lands, and all of a sudden a team like Spirit or Forge, they're not that scary. If you're playing a LAN, all of a sudden, like some of these fringe top 30 teams like Skate and Ecstatic and just name off anybody, those guys maybe all of a sudden can't beat you. But
Mhm.
online, you could lose to Indy Ray and almost have to pack up
Oh.
your bags and retire. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
it's totally different game online. So yeah, if they can keep playing lands and just I'd say for the next year they could really hover in that top 15, top 20, maybe higher. Fur is the big question mark, and Fallen too, because Fur is genuinely playing really good Counter-Strike. Like, forget their dated style of play or anything like that. He's just killing everybody right now. It's actually pretty impressive. And if you
Wild.
look at his stats, it's like pretty brain dead. And then like Fallen has like good stats, but like that's also a big question mark too. Is if he starts playing against the Zywus and the Simples, what are we going to see Fallen like? So I'd say like for the next year they can hover around that 15-20 mark, but I think eventually they'll kind of be like the next Dignitas where they'll just kind of hover into like, okay, they don't make the next major. I would say that their goal is to stay together and make the Brazil major. And then after that, they'll
Mm.
probably retire and not really care too much, if I had to guess. But
That's a really good call for me. Yeah, I mean, the Brazil major is something that they've probably had on their sightline. I think they've even said it themselves, haven't they? They've had in their vision for a long time. You perform at the Brazil major, whether that's on stage or not, is obviously going to be a huge long shot. But yeah, I just being there, I think is their huge goal, and they're at that age, as you say, where it literally is going to be the last dance. Like they didn't call it that for no reason, right? Like it genuinely is the last attempt. For Fur 30, FNX 32, Fallen reaching that age as well. Like I'm a believer in age not being a huge problem. Like I mean, just look at Forest for example. But like, obviously Fallen right now, like literally as I said, bringing these players back up from the dead, basically, with having all that experience. But as you say, how long this lasts, maybe another year of playing together and continuing to get the money for stickers, especially as well. That's just humongous for the organization and for the amount of people who actually buy them, because Brazil is just going to put heaps of money into it through the game. So yeah, it's worth it for them to continue, but not if they're going to start really dropping off hard. So yeah, I would agree with you and say like another year is about right.
Yeah. I almost forgot about the Rio Major, right? And I think that is definitely the lifespan almost. If they can get to that stage and at least have a chance to play, like get to playoffs, which I imagine is where the crowd would come in, that would be.
Imagine. Do you remember what event was
crazy.
that? Was it ESL One Belo Horizonte? That match where was it the MIBR with Stewie and Tarek on it when they played that cash game? Am I remembering this correctly?
I have
It's a
no
long time
idea.
ago.
I
But
couldn't.
there was this famous match where like Sadakist and like Henry G are like shouting so loud because like the crowd, they literally can't shout louder than the crowd is cheering,
Oh my
and the
God.
Brazilian crowd. Like I have to find that clip
Yeah,
again
yeah.
because I'll send it to you later, because that clip's just like it's like rent free in my mind of
Oh
like what crowds
gosh.
should be like. Yeah,
If all else fails, Furia will keep their form up, and we're good there
absolutely. Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
All right. So closing things out here, I want to talk about what we're gonna be seeing next week, because a lot of big games on the horizon here. The Legend stage is, I think, gonna be like jam packed. I think the only team that was not at a Legend status, who failed to qualify to the stage was Astralis, right? Every other team, you could argue, there was required some upsets. I think a very minimal, disappointments, in terms of qualifying to this stage. So that's gonna leave a lot of sad faces here in this stage. Failing to make playoffs for a lot of these teams is gonna be a massive disappointment. And I was running through the I can't remember what it's called, like the major IMB thing, and in the matchups that I'm getting in like round 2 of my 0-2s are crazy.
crazy.
It's absolutely stunning what I'm getting in, and I'm doing a little bit of upsets here and there, but for the most part, like you got 2 best of 1s, and then you're getting like a crazy elimination match. So walk me through you guys' expectations. Maybe talk a little bit about pick'ems, but for the most part, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so for me, actually, I use that major IB website to do my pick'ems because I
Yeah.
actually think it's probably the best way to go about it. Like,
Oh yeah.
otherwise, I go with my heart too much, Like, I'm just I'd
Yeah.
send
You,
too
you
many
got to get the
teams through.
matchups to decide
But the
who's making it.
matchups really decide it, and there are some teams built for the best of one stage, and there are some teams who are not. And one team that I think will not make it through the best of one stage that probably is supposed to is NIP. I don't
100%.
think I don't think they can output what some of these other teams can output. Estetag's not out-opping Hades. He's not out-opping Shiro. He's not out-opping anybody at this stage. I'm gonna be honest, like any not even I mean, there's nobody. There's
Yeah.
nobody's out-opping. Their riflers are great, but their T sides have been lackluster in the past, and they had about what 2 weeks with Brolin. I mean, that's not really that much to really build up your system with a brand new guy. They're also speaking what 4 people, probably Swedish, and then just like Essetag, go pick here. Like how I don't know how they're balancing that, or if Essetag can understand Swedish decently. The dynamic to me is weird. Um,
I don't think
Without
it
an
was a
Opper,
long-term thing.
yeah, I don't think so either. But to me, it's just like in a BO1, there's just not too many ways they can make it through. The team that I have, who I think will do extremely well on the stage, is Heroic. I have them as my 3-0. I would assume that people that go the route of actually picking who they think will go 3-0 would also pick Heroic a lot of times. If not, maybe like Cloud9 at this point. But I think Heroic's like the most built for BO1 because they play everything at a high level and you can't surprise them, and they've got to sit at home for the last 2 weeks just getting ready. So I think
Yeah.
they'll do really well. Um, I think there's gonna be some disappointments. I mean, Big is a team I don't have going through. Some people might have them going through. I don't have them going through. I have BNE crashing out at this point, 03. I am afraid to put Imperial because I was afraid to put yeah, I couldn't believe they even made it here, but in a PO1 I could see Imperial outsiders, like Imperial could win that match,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Like
Yeah.
no
all of
doubt.
a sudden there's weird matchups where like
The best
you
ones
can
are
see
heavy.
people, yeah, you can see so for me, I'm gonna put BNE. I feel like they've got where they're happy. They're like, okay, we made it here. I don't think they're gonna take their foot off the pedal per se. I just think like they're gonna meet their maker and almost everybody other than like Imperial maybe. So um, in my one Hopium pick to go through is Liquid. I think they can do it. The way the matchups came out for me, I'm not gonna be able to show you guys, but if I was able
No,
to show you the way that my matchups came out, Liquid could actually win. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
oh, you go ahead, Travis.
yeah, I was just going to say that I'm the two. I completely agree with you. But firstly, I completely agree on NIP. I don't think like sure Brolin has the star factor. And I think Brolin plus Rez is a brilliant, two rifler setup. But Plopsky now hasn't impressed me for years, and yeah, Essetag is a huge problem. But yeah, the two teams that really scare me. I haven't picked NIP incidentally, but the two teams that really scare me that I haven't picked are Liquid and Big. To be honest, I haven't picked Copenhagen Flames either, and they're obviously land demons. But yeah, not picking Big worries me greatly. Like I've picked Ents 3-0 because I thought they looked really good in the challenger stage, and their loss against G2 was, incredibly close. And they, not many teams actually dismantle outsiders, no matter what form outsiders are on. Like they 16-6 them, I think. So yeah, I think Ents are a team that could very easily go 3-0, but also like especially if they beat FaZe in the BO1, anything can happen in the BO1. But also they're a team that could maybe just miss out on playoffs, like 2-3, something like that. So that's why I picked them 3-0. The two teams that I've picked that I'm scared about, I have picked Heroic to go through, incidentally, but I think they probably won't do too well in the playoffs. But the two teams that I am scared about that I've picked, which are Cloud9 and Vitality. I think Vitality can easily regress and go back to that. Sure, they went 3-0, but that form previously that was dangerously bad, for a team with that amount of talent on it. Sure, land buff, I think they're going to be okay. That's why I picked them, but I'm slightly concerned that could happen. And Cloud9, I've always been a fan of this team, this roster. I like all their players. Axel and Shiro are some of my personal heroes when it comes to my fancy statistics. Cole, that you'll know from some
Yeah.
of the Vertigo stats that Shiro has.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, they have been a bit iffy in the past on LAN, and while they will get to a particular stage, like maybe top 8, top 4, they will then fall by the wayside quite quickly. So there's a chance for me that maybe some added pressure of now being under Cloud9, maybe that's just something subconsciously, who knows. I want to see them qualify, but I'm slightly concerned they might not. And incidentally, I will say as well, having picked Furia, FaZe, G2, and Navi to go through, I think Furia is a really, really good 3-0 pick, like just in general. So I'll leave it there.
Alrighty. We have lost one of them, but I think Stamina should be back here soon. So
okay.
he'll just be on
we've
his
got double
box for a
camera.
little bit.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna look over.
There we go. He'll be joining us,
no.
I'm sure. Yeah,
I'm Stamina and myself right now. Incredible.
There we go. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm looking at some of the matchups. If you guys want to take a look at them, it's major.ieb.im. You can go find out a lot of the matchups there, and we'll probably take into account a lot of this because it is how I do my pickups as well. I'm not sure if it is how you do yours, Travis, but
I look at it. I definitely look at it, and
Yeah.
the main reason of me picking, like saying Fury is a really good pick, is they start off against Spirit, right? Which is another reason why I've put Spirit 0-3.
okay.
But yeah, at the same time, BNE is the safer choice for sure. But I want to, I feel like I'm quite confident in the 5 that I've got.
Yeah.
It's just a question of,
Well,
as
the
I
worst
said,
thing that you can
Vitality
do
shit the bed.
is change your predictions and then it be like wrong and you were
That's
right
why I kept with
originally.
IHC.
So, yeah.
Exactly. I couldn't
You
forgive myself
can't-
if IHC actually went 0-3.
Yeah. No, you can't switch it up at this point. I haven't
Yeah.
actually finished mine yet, so I'm planning on doing that after this. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm always impressed with Cloud9. I think that they actually have a really decent path to 3-0. Taking on like big for their opening match. I believe.
Yeah. Big
or rather
scare me,
outsiders.
as I said, I have to say.
They take on outsiders, and then I have them like taking on Imperial.
Yes.
So they've got a great pathway to that 3-0 that I think that they can really make it through. I think that it's so hard to nail down like the top 8 right now. I have Liquid making it through, of course, because you almost have to if you're an NA fan, and they have seemed to be able to stabilize just a little bit. Their opening matches aren't too bad either, so I think that they can oftentimes have Heroic's number. I don't know what it is about that matchup, but they pretty consistently able to deal with them, and so I'm expecting them to have a pretty good start. And if that is the case, then we can we can be good. There you go.
Yeah.
My apologies. My girlfriend accidentally locked herself out of the apartment on a walk with her dog, so I had to go let her back in. But
Classic.
yeah,
all good. No worries. Can't wait for that with my new apartment. That's what we were talking about right before we went live. But what about you? I was kind of talking about some like top 8. Who do you think is like a lock in for playoffs right now? Give me maybe like 3 or 4 teams that you think are certain to make it through, and we'll see if we align.
So I think the 3 like absolute locks to me are Heroic, FaZe, and Navi. Those 3, I can't see them not making it through. FaZe has been the best team for, the last couple 3 months, whatever the time frame's been really, but FaZe is really incredible. And Kerrigan wants it, right? I also think that Heroic just has the proper build to always float in the top 5, 6 in the world. And it's studio environment, right? Studio environment's always going to get you through. Like, you don't have to worry too much about nerves and stuff like that. And then Navi has Simple, and he's just undeniable. It doesn't matter. Perfecto can have a bad game. Bit could have a bad game. Simple's not having a bad game. He's gonna get them through. I think even with everything floating over their heads, and the war and everything, it's so tough for them. But I think they're definitely gonna get through. At a bare minimum, they might not make a deep run. With a lot of the actual like crazy things that are surfacing about. I don't know if you guys have seen like some of the rumors of like roster changes and
Saw on
whatnot,
the
but
No Majors Club,
yeah,
Yakindar to Navi. That was a
yeah,
bit shocking, but
yeah.
I'd love that. I'd
I
love
I
that.
mean,
want him
Yeah.
for Liquid
I'd love
myself.
it
But
too, but like the problem is it's from rumors that I've read, it's like maybe for electronic,
yeah,
right?
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like losing electronics like rough, but there was
Electronic
also
hasn't
rumors,
been the same though recently.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt you, but like
true,
I
true.
feel like he's been a little bit off the form that put him to like one of the top 5 players in the world. So I don't mind that at all. I mean, Electronic's
Yeah,
got a kid to worry about now as well. So
right.
who knows?
Yeah. And then yeah, I see for me the thing about Navi is right, like they're one of those teams where as long as you have simple, you could give them basically anybody from that region and they're gonna be good, right? But yeah, I don't see nerves getting to them. So those guys are a lock. The teams that are like fringe for me that should be locks but could somehow not make it are like Cloud9, like Cloud9 could somehow not make it. I think like Furia could somehow not make it. Although I see Furia as a deep run team. Like I see Furia top 4. Like
Mhm.
I think they're like one of the favorites to maybe win it all with
Yeah.
everything going on right now. And then G2. I think G2 could falter. Like when you see teams like Copenhagen Flames who are just the best team ever when they're on LAN, and Big Clan who are, I have Tapson at the head and everything they have going on there, and
Yeah.
Vitality. I mean, I don't have Vitality going through, right? Like maybe it's a joke because I have Liquid going through, but literally there are so many teams here. Like Outsiders might pull it off, you know? What if
Mhm.
Outsiders plays against Cloud9 and they have a really good game at 2-2 or something, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
It's tough.
G2's opening match is Navi, right? Like you couldn't get any
Exactly. That's
worse, and then
tough.
it could be potentially ints after that. Like that's what I was talking about. Where you talk about these matches that we're gonna be seeing. I don't think the seeding could have been any more brutal in some occasions. Whatever
Yeah.
pans out, pans out. And, one prediction off is going to completely spiral these. But
Is historically though, Navi versus G2 as a matchup for G2 could be a good thing. Historically, Navi sucks first game of the tournament.
True.
Mhm.
You actually
True.
look back at it throughout like multiple majors, multiple tournaments where they're starting with a BO1, they'll lose. They'll lose to bad teams. Like
Yeah,
actually Navi lost to MIBR at an event, a blast event
Flash at the
in a
beginning of the
BO1.
year. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So we're talking about maybe best case scenario for G2 is that they do play Navi and they're sleepy day one. And then, I still think Navi would make it through 3-1 at that point. But, I think for G2 that could be a good thing actually.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. I
in
think
a
my
weird way.
three. Yeah. True. I think my 3 locks are actually. Um, while I think it's maybe a bit of like just bias in general, perhaps coming out here because I've never been I really enjoy watching Stown from Heroic, but other than that, I'm not really a personal fan about a lot of the players. I've picked them, sure, but I feel like maybe my personal lock 3 are actually Navi, FaZe, and Furia. I think Furia lately are looking just incredibly solid and impressive, and I feel like Furia are a sort of team where their B game can still win them a BO1 and can still win them, grind them through a BO3 as well. Like they've reached a level now where they've almost got to that Navi Simple level where Simple might not be playing the best he's ever played before, but his B or C game can still win Navi the game. And I think some like Furia as a group have perhaps got to that stage now, from recent form, especially to me anyway,
Mhm.
where they might be able to, where they're at that sort of level. So I would really be very, very, very surprised if Fury don't make the top 8 playoffs and get to play in front of the crowd. So we'll see. As I said, I'm most worried about, I think it was while you were gone, I was talking about like how I was most worried about Vitality and Cloud9. I am a bit worried about Vitality in the sense of they could regress a little bit to their previous iffy form, but I still think on LAN they're better, and Cloud9 could possibly. I also agree with you. Cloud9 are a team that could easily go 3-0, but could also not make it. So, yeah, my 3 locks are Navi, FaZe, Furia, and I would put G2 and Heroic at about 5% behind both of them, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I think that I'm very excited to see what we can get out of this Furia team. And like you put it best. They have a very good like B and C game that is partially responsible because they have probably some of the best in role players for
Yeah.
all of their slots. Right? There's no lacking pieces. we all talked about how like Safe was gonna hop into this team and like immediately, drop crazy numbers and literally carry them single-handedly across the line. That hasn't been the case, right? We've just seen Cacerado be, the best star rifler in Brazil. You've got Yuri that's actually increased in form alongside him. Art obviously has his IGLing and his calling, his T-side ability has been very good. And then Drop, I think, is the individual that's been highlighted in like the last 2 or so months that has really been a lot better. I think that he individually has improved tenfold from his early stages on Furia, and it might be as a result of being more comfortable with Safe, but Safe has almost had to do very little on this team, and that Safe can he can have a series where he's just going to take over here or there. He's going to hit the shots he needs to hit, and I've said this in my Dust 2 article. They asked, and I said they're probably my dark horse. My hot take was that they could easily win this major if they take on a phase that's lacking just a little bit, or a Na'Vi that's lacking just a little bit in the final.
Yeah, I think Furia they're an interesting team, right? Because like you said it, they have the best players in their position, and the tough thing is like every team, when you look at all the great teams, right? Who were like these great team stars. One of the biggest reasons why FaZe Clan works right now is because Rain plays the not fun positions and he makes it look fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like Cacerado
Yeah.
for years was like dead B player on Mirage, but he has a 1.4 rating on Mirage. How?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's just like it's like they have guys who don't need like Yuri and Cacerado don't need to play fun positions or do fun things to be very efficient. Whereas like Art, he like kind of does. So like it's just a perfect balance. And then, Safe, I think he's had more time now to like really integrate into the system. They've probably been in Europe boot camping all this time. So I'd assume that scrims are probably going pretty well for them. And I played with Drop a couple weeks ago on like FPL and stuff.
Yeah.
And this kid is actually really impressive. He really impresses me. Um, and I think the biggest thing about him was like it's an FPL game, but it doesn't matter. Okay. I've played with a lot of like different pros in NA and FPL games. This kid like takes initiative left and right. Like he was like in-game leading all these games. And like when you're like a young 18-year-old kid and you're taking that kind of initiative and just like leadership, like naturally, it's pretty impressive. Like I play with other top pros in FPL and they don't do that and they literally do that on their team. So it's like this drop kid, he has a lot of potential. And then Safe, obviously, like you said, he hasn't been activated really yet. So I don't know. They're definitely up there. I
Mhm.
think they're gonna go top 4 for sure, but who knows? This is a crazy major actually.
For sure. All right.
It's the most stacked Legend stage I've ever seen.
I know.
Absolutely. Like even dating back to the majors which didn't have this format, I honestly think like just the organization name value alone is the most stacked I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And then you got the player value as well. I just think it's absolutely nuts. And I think whoever gets a diamond coin this major will have truly earned it, because there's going to be a
Yeah.
lot of gold out there
True.
for me.
For
If
sure.
FaZe don't win the major, there's going to be a ton of fucking gold.
Yeah.
True.
No, I think already there's going to be a lot of gold within that first challenger stage. I think a lot of people
Yeah.
got their diamond dreams ripped away from them. Thank you all so much. I mean, I feel like it's a good time to wrap everything up. If you all want to shout anything out, before we head out, make sure you guys are more than welcome to do that now. Stamina, you can go ahead, go first.
Yeah, just shout out my Twitter. Just go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Stamina. It's with a J instead of the I because I'm fancy. And yeah, I post some content on my YouTube
Yeah.
channel. You can also find that. I tweet everything out. So yeah.
I'll say you can follow me as well at TravCS. I'll tweet most about the major there, and I say thanks, Cole, for having me on. It was a bit last minute for me, but it's always fun. It's just look, it's going to end directly on midnight for me, bang on midnight. So how about that?
Perfect. Alrighty. Thank you all so much. It was a great time. Again, follow Travis. He's got a great tweets, of course, and then Stamina's been pumping out some YouTube content. I couldn't recommend it if you're trying to become, a solid CS player. Good content over there on his YouTube. But with all that being said, we're going to see you all here after the legend stage of the groups. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Have a wonderful night. Peace.